Hello everyone and welcome to our webinar this morning. My name is Sarah. I work in the marketing team here at Best Practice Network. If you haven't heard of us, we are the leading early years apprenticeship provider, and today we're going to be talking to you about all three of our early years apprenticeships. So that's level 2, 3 and 5. So today we have Emma Redding, our apprenticeship curriculum manager, and we have Sarah Bishop, our senior performance manager, who'll be talking to you about the apprenticeships themselves, how they're delivered, what you'll learn. And we also have Steve Poulsom, who's our senior funding coordinator, and he'll be taking you through all the funding options and how to apply as well. If you have any questions as we're going through, if you can have a look and find the Q&A button, the box, and then if you have any questions, just pop them in there, and then at the end there'll be plenty of time for us to work through them, and yeah, we'll answer any queries that you have. Right, so I think we'll get started, and I'll hand over to you, Emma.
Great, thank you. So I'm Emma Redding, and I'm the curriculum manager for Early Years Apprenticeships, and I'll be starting off by talking you through all of our Early Years Apprenticeships that we have to offer, and a bit about our curriculum. We'll be looking at the apprenticeships from level 2 early years up to level 5 early years today. If there is anything that you particularly do want to get out of the session, please feel free to put questions in the Q&A throughout, and we'll answer them all at the end. So I'll start with just talking you through a bit about what an apprenticeship is. An apprenticeship is a learning program that allows apprentices to learn while they earn, basically. So they'll be able to learn the practical skills they need in their workplace whilst also completing their qualification. So it's a great way of being able to apply the learnt theory into practice immediately. An apprenticeship is made up of lots of different parts. So we've got the apprenticeship standard, which is made up of knowledge, skills and behaviours that every apprentice needs to develop and to be able to demonstrate whilst they're on their apprenticeship. There's maths and English functional skills, which we'll talk a bit more about throughout, which is mandatory for 16 to 18-year-old apprentices and is optional for apprentices 19 and above. So we'll talk a bit more about how that looks in each programme. There's off-the-job training, which we will discuss a little bit more later on in the session, but is a requirement of every apprenticeship. When an apprentice gets to the end of their programme, there is something called a gateway, where they basically have a meeting with the apprentice, the employer and the apprenticeship tutor to confirm that they are ready for endpoint assessment. And then there is an endpoint assessment for every one of our apprenticeships. And I'll be talking you through what our endpoint assessments are for the 3 apprenticeships that we're looking at today. So what are the benefits of doing one of our early years apprenticeships? It's an excellent way of supporting development of practitioners to help them to really excel within their role and be the best that they can be within an early year setting. It allows apprentices, as I've mentioned already, to apply the theoretical learning into practice in their workplace. Provides a fully recognised qualification in line with the YFS requirements. So, for example, our level 3, level 5 apprenticeships are counted at that level within ratio, our level 2 apprenticeship as well. So all of our apprenticeships are fully helping with meeting the YFS requirements of ratios. And it offers a route into higher education whilst working and gaining practical experience. So as you can already see from the apprenticeships alone, we offer from level 2 to 5. And there's also further qualifications that we can recommend beyond that. So it allows that route into higher education whilst working, and helps apprentices to develop not just their knowledge, skills and behaviours, but their confidence, communication skills and all of the wider learning skills as well. It's an opportunity for an apprentice to gain a fully funded qualification. So apprentices will never need to pay any part of their apprenticeship training. So it's completely free for an apprentice, and it's 95% government funded. And Steve will be talking you through some of the different funding routes later on in the webinar. So as I've mentioned, our early years apprenticeships are a great way of progressing into higher education if somebody wants to take further study. So as I mentioned, we've got the level 2 early years practitioner apprenticeship, early years educator level 3, and early years lead practitioner level 5. And these are the 3 apprenticeships that we'll be focusing on in today's webinar. Beyond that, we can also support with further learning. So we can recommend further study if somebody wants to do a top-up degree. We can recommend and are partnered with a university in particular that do an online top-up degree. So apprentices can go on and do that after their level 5. And we also offer early years initial teacher training. So anyone that completes their apprenticeship at level 5 and then does their top-up degree can then also come back to us and do EYITT if that is what they want to complete. So that's one of just many pathways that somebody might follow. But if somebody does want further study within early years and wants to take that kind of further academic study, then that is the full progression route that somebody could take. So what does our delivery plan look like? So we have a blended programme of face-to-face and online study. So we have online virtual classroom sessions, which are designed to be really engaging, interactive sessions and support apprentices to be able to share their own knowledge and experiences and ideas with other apprentices. There's also face-to-face visits with an apprenticeship tutor and online visits as well with their tutor. And that we have different platforms, so an online library of resources that apprentices can access for independent learning as well. Apprentices will have progress reviews between every 4 to 6 weeks, and these will be completed with the apprenticeship tutor, the learner and the employer as well. There is specialist one-to-one tutor support available. All of our apprenticeship tutors are specialised within early years and have the expertise in early years to be able to give you that support. And we have maths and English tutors that can give that maths and English support as well where required. We have BPN Boost, which is our personal development, career information, advice and guidance and welfare programme. So that's another key part of our apprenticeship, all of the wellbeing and career information, advice and guidance that we can give through the BPN Boost programme. It involves things like monthly webinar sessions on different topics such as resilience, British values, physical health, careers. So we do lots of different classes. We have a podcast as well, which is accessible for our learners to be able to listen to, and a library of different resources and access to something called Association of Apprentices as well through that. We encourage regular reflections on learning and practice throughout the programme. So that's a big part of the apprenticeship. And there's finally the partnership working between us as the training provider, the apprentice and the employer. So making sure that we are all working together closely to support your learning. So I'll now just go over a bit about the 3 programmes that we're looking at today. So starting with Early Years Practitioner Level 2. So our Early Years Practitioner Level 2 apprenticeship is a 13-month programme which can be completed in a minimum of 12 months. So for any of our apprenticeships, the minimum duration would be 12 months on programme. And there's a 3-month endpoint assessment window. So after they've had their 13 months on programme, there's then 3 months for endpoint assessment. So I mentioned functional skills. If an apprentice is 16 to 18 and has not already achieved maths and English level 1 or equivalent, then they will need to complete their maths and English level 1 functional skills. It is also an option, so we would encourage any apprentice to take the opportunity to complete their maths and English if they haven't achieved those qualifications, just because it's that great opportunity to get the funding for the maths and English qualifications and to support with your career progression, but it's mandatory for 16 to 18-year-olds to have to do that. The level 2 early years practitioner has a additional diploma within it. So apprentices will be working towards level 2 early years practitioner diploma, but it's basically all within one programme. So that's all tied in with the knowledge, skills and behaviours that we're already looking at. It's ideal for learners that are new to early years or are not quite ready for level 3. So it's that ideal starting point for somebody that is new to the sector. The programme consists of 9 core modules, including areas such as child development, health and safety, safeguarding and purposeful play and assessment. And when an apprentice gets to the end of their programme, they will have a multiple choice test and a professional discussion underpinned by a portfolio of evidence. So the portfolio will have lots of kind of real practical work-based evidence that the apprentice has completed while in the apprenticeship, and that will support the professional discussion. So that is our level 2 early years practitioner. And then we've got early years educator level 3. So this one is a 15-month programme, and there's a 3-month endpoint assessment. As I've mentioned, there's a minimum duration for any of our apprenticeships as 12 months. It's a fully recognised qualification and supports with meeting ratio requirements for early years level 3 in an early years setting. This one, again, functional skills, maths and English are a requirement that are mandatory for 16 to 18-year-olds. We would strongly encourage anybody that doesn't have the maths and English to complete their maths and English, particularly with the English being an EYFS requirement. Learners do need to complete their paediatric first aid and submit their certificate as part of their apprenticeship. And it consists of 11 modules, and some of the modules being similar to what's covered on level 2, but everything goes that bit more in depth, and we cover things like theories of learning, as you can see, safeguarding, health and safety, child development, and so on. So 11 core modules. And at the end of the programme, there's an endpoint assessment again. So the endpoint assessment is an observation and questioning session in the workplace and a professional discussion with a portfolio of evidence. And then finally, we've got the Early Years Lead Practitioner. So this one is designed for those that are in a leadership role or are able to demonstrate leadership, so are being given the opportunity to develop into a leadership role. It's an 18-month programme for the total time of duration while on programme, with then a 5 to 6 month endpoint assessment window at the end. So there's a minimum duration, again, 12 months, but because it's a high level programme, it's likely that apprentices will need usually the 18 months on programme. It's again, there's the functional skills, maths and English requirement for if there are any 16 to 18-year-olds on programme. We wouldn't have many 16 to 18-year-old learners who take this qualification, but if so, then it's mandatory for 16 to 18-year-olds. And we'd also strongly recommend the maths and English, especially because maths is an EYFS requirement for managers, and English is a EYFS requirement to be counted in ratio. This programme is delivered in cohorts, so learners all stay in the same group with the same apprentices, get to know their group really well for the virtual classroom sessions. And there's 19 online sessions which are delivered, including some leadership practice, a lot of leadership theory covered in that, a unique child, implementation of legislation and guidance, and learning and development. When an apprentice gets to the end of their apprenticeship, they will have, just go back, 3 endpoint assessment methods. So there will be a professional discussion with a portfolio of evidence, a observation in the workplace, and there's also a case study report and presentation that the apprentice needs to complete. But we give lots of support throughout the programme to support apprentices for all of our endpoint assessments. Just to add, the Early Years Lead Practitioner apprenticeship is a fully recognised level 5 qualification in line with the YFS. So that is a bit about all of our programmes and what they all look like. I am now going to hand over to Sarah, who's going to go over a bit about the employer requirements with you.
Thank you, Emma, for that. So yes, nice to meet you all. My name's Sarah Bishop. I'm the Performance Manager at Best Practice Network. And one of the things that I'm going to go over is a bit about the employer requirements. And, from working with apprentices for the length of duration I have, it is really key to acknowledge the role that the employer plays and actually how important you are within the apprenticeship. Our apprentices spend 80% of their time with you guys and 20% with us, really. It's, so you guys have quite a huge impact there. And one of the things that, we do make sure that we do to support our employers is make sure that you guys do receive a copy of the employer handbook, which really sort of sets out the expectations in terms of the role of the employer with the apprenticeship or the mentor, whoever that may be. And one of the things that we ask for employers is to attend learner reviews. So apprentices will have 4 to 6 weekly reviews. They'll have a start review in line with their induction. They'll have regular progress reviews, of course, their gateway review to say that they're ready to go through endpoint assessment, and then an exit review at the very end of programme. And in doing that, ensuring that you've got that attendance, that's really a good opportunity for you to get those updates from that tutor and from the apprentice as well at how your apprentice is progressing. Another key thing is allowing time for apprentices to attend their webinars. The webinars have such a core amount of learning, and it's a really good opportunity for the apprentices to engage with other settings really and see what other sites are doing to support the earlier sector. And it could be a really good opportunity to get new ideas in and for them to really sort of work together to help with that. So allowing that time, and also that 20% off the job training. So as Emma said earlier, it works out about 6 hours a week. But of course, with off the job training as well, if you've got a part-time apprentice working 29 hours a week or less, it's usually around sort of 3 to 3.5 hours of training. I will go into a bit more of off the job training in the next slide, but that's really sort of a key requirement of the employers to ensure that we're making sure those apprentices have that time to be able to develop knowledge against those knowledge, skills and behaviours as well. It's really important that our employers do offer the apprentices a mentor. Now, that could either be yourselves or it could be somebody in the setting with that higher level of responsibility to be able to provide that regular feedback to the apprentice, but also to support them, within their role. A lot of our apprentices we see, particularly on our lower level qualifications, are brand new to sector. So having that designated person in the workplace can be really valuable to them. And of course, provide the apprentices with those opportunities to develop those knowledge, skills and behaviours. So giving them that exposure to new experiences, those shadowing opportunities in line with the workplace as well. So, that's really sort of in terms of employer requirements. We do, of course, have the contractual side of all the agreements, but that's really sort of the key part there. So I will just go on to off the job training in a bit more depth on the next slide, please. And from there, just go into a bit of information on that. So off the job training. Off the job training is time within the apprentice's paid working hours that the apprentice has to develop their knowledge, skills and behaviours. Now, lots of settings do this in lots of different ways, but here are some examples of off the job training that could be relevant to some of your apprentices that you may have on programmes. So for example, inset days, a lot of term time only provisions or year-round provisions will have almost like a training day where the apprentice is within that paid working time, but they are gaining a lot of sort of CPD knowledge, skills and behaviours, which can count towards the off-the-job training. There may be some coaching and mentoring of that apprentice that can count towards that as well as reflective learning time. So, say for example, there's been a incident in the setting, some of that reflection of looking at what that event was, what happened, what they could do differently next time, and really unpicking that could be a way to support their off the job in that reflective learning from that side of things. Sarah, my screen's gone black. Don't know if it has for you as well, Emma and Steve. Apologies, we'll just wait for that to come back. Lovely, thank you. We've also got workplace shadowing as well. So this could be, potentially going to shadow other members of staff who may be more experienced, or say, for example, if you've got a nursery practitioner who's, fairly new, but wants to gain more knowledge and skills around working with children with additional needs, and you've got some one-to-one staff in there, you may get them shadowing some of those staff as well, so they can pick up new skills or sort of cues that they can use to work with the children. Things like project activity, research, interactive learning and training events, all of those could be a range of methods. One of the things that we do like our apprentices to do is, of course, the off-job time could be the webinars, but also we do prefer that they have some time to complete some of their tasks as well and their reflective learning to go towards those modules as well, as well as that work-based learning. And of course, finally, any sort of networking events as well. I know there's usually an annual nursery world conference and things like that. So if your apprentices are very fortunate to go to any of those, that of course can act as CPD and upskilling. So there's quite a range of ways that can count towards and we can capture off the job. It doesn't just have to be, like the old days where the apprentice would go in a room for 6 hours a week and then, we wouldn't see them. It can also be that workplace, development of those skills and the behaviours, really, in the room with other staff, with other children as well, to gain those skills. So that's a bit about off the job. I will now hand over to Steve, who's going to talk to you all about funding and all things related to that. So thank you.
Good morning, everybody. So yeah, my name's Steve Poulsom. I'm a Senior Funding Coordinator here at Best Practice Network. So I just want to talk you through the funding routes that are available for these early years apprenticeships. and the funding prices. So the early years level 2, the practitioner is £4,000. The early years educator level 3 is £7,000, and the early years lead practitioner level 5 is £8,000. Now, due to government incentives, the maximum employer contribution for any of these programs would be £400 because you only need to pay 5%. But I'll just talk you through the funding routes now. So if you are a large company or a large setting that has a PAYE over £3 million per annum, you will automatically pay into what's called the apprenticeship levy. And if you do pay into the apprenticeship levy, then your apprenticeship will be fully funded and won't come out of your levy. If you are a smaller setting or, even a fairly large setting, but your PAYE is under £3 million per annum, then you won't pay into the apprenticeship levy. But the government will co-fund the apprenticeship for you, and they will pay 95% of the apprenticeship. So we would only invoice you for the 5%, and all the funding is arranged through a .gov portal called the Apprenticeship Service, and that is how all the payments will be taken out of your account there for the apprenticeship. We can also help you to try and arrange for what's called an apprenticeship levy transfer. So sometimes bigger companies that pay into the apprenticeship levy but don't spend all of their levy fund, they will be willing to transfer that across to you. You would need to have an apprenticeship service account, and to set up an apprenticeship service account, you need to have your own PAYE code. So they're all linked together, and you can apply, and we can help you with that if you're not sure what to do. Once you've applied for your apprenticeship service account and you've got it set up, you can then go in and you can apply for a levy transfer, and you can see all the companies that have money to spend that they're willing to gift out of their apprenticeship levy, and it'll also tell you sort of which industry that they would like to spend the money on. So some companies will not fund necessarily education. If they are, say, an industry for engineering, then they might decide they want to spend their excess levy on engineering. But all that information is available on the .gov apprenticeship service portal. If your setting does have fewer than 50 employees and you don't pay into the apprenticeship levy, the government will fully fund any learners that you put you apply for that are 16 to 21 years old or are between 22 and 24, and they have an education, health and care plan. We also have an incentive for young apprentices between 16 and 18, where you will both receive an additional £1,000. So that's the funding routes there.
Great, thanks everyone. Hopefully you'll feel much more informed now about our early years apprenticeships. So just to sort of remind you, if you have any questions that have come to mind, please pop them in the Q&A box and we'll get to those in just a moment. But if you want to go ahead and apply, if you just go to our website, there's a QR code on the screen there. Emma, I don't know if you can... There's some thing missing on there, the link, but there we go. Yeah, the link's on the screen as well as the QR code. So yeah, that's how you apply. And the deadline to apply for all 3 of our early years apprenticeships is the 6th of April. So coming up quite soon. So yeah, do get your applications in if you want to go ahead. Right, so we'll move on to questions now. So as I said, any questions you have, please pop them in the Q&A box. We have one already, so I'll go to that. So it's kind of a bit of a broad question. So appreciate the focus is on 2, 3 and 5, levels 2, 3 and 5. But could you share your thoughts on upcoming teacher degree apprenticeships? Don't know if that's something that you have any thoughts on, Emma or Sarah?
I can take that one. It is something that we are looking at the moment. For the apprenticeship itself should be, we're looking at, I think for September, should be available for September is what we've heard. With Best Practice Network, we're hoping to be able to offer it in in some form, but it's still all in development. So it's something that we're looking at, but we don't have any detail on how that will look at the moment. But the apprenticeship itself should be around sort of September time, we believe.
Great, thanks, Emma. Okay, so another question here. Someone asking, I haven't studied for a few years and worried about going back to learning. I'm wondering if you have any advice.
Yeah, I could probably support with that one. So yeah, very, very much something we recognise in terms of that. You know, we have a lot of apprentices who have been out of education for a long period of time who do then come on to do an apprenticeship as well. And we do recognise that for some apprentices, this can be quite daunting. Some of them haven't had to do any sort of written tasks in quite a long time. And some of them do need sort of a bit of development with their study skills, particularly on those higher levels like the level 5, such as referencing. So we do have designated study skills modules built into the curriculum, and with that, that is something that we can support the apprentice with. And how we view it is we view it very much as you know, sort of as a marathon, not a sprint. You know, it's not something that we expect perfection straight away. It's something that is built on you know, regularly throughout program and is built up over time. So there's not the expectation for perfection straight away.
Thanks, Sarah. That's brilliant. Someone asking, you mentioned part-time apprenticeships. As our possible future apprentice has children, I don't think she could do 30 hours a week. Is that
Yeah,
something?
I can help with that answer as well. So yeah, absolutely. We can have part-time apprentices as long as they are working at least 16 hours per week. That is something that we can support on program. It does mean their duration of program will be slightly longer to allow them that time to gain the off-the-job required for the occupational side of the knowledge, skills and behaviours. But yes, that is something that we can support with. Absolutely. We have many part-time apprentices on program as well.
Great, thank you. Somebody asking about funding, so one for you, Steve. As a small charity, we'd be able to access funding for virtual all of the apprenticeship. I'm confused by it's all funded, plus that you can apply to have funding from another employer. So just asking for clarification on that.
Yeah, so okay. I think for voluntary aided or charity settings, it can be a little bit more challenging. You would need to have your own PAYE regardless of where the funding is coming from, because you'd need to have a PAYE code to set up an apprenticeship service account. That is the funding route. I think if you are able to set up your apprenticeship service account, then you could apply for a levy transfer if you don't want to pay the 5% yourself. Also, if you're part of a local authority, you can ask them if they'd be willing to pay the funding on the apprenticeship as well. But you really need to have your own PAYE really to be able to progress. Otherwise, it's just not possible. I hope that answers the question.
Great, thanks, Steve. Somebody asking, is it okay to have level 2, 3 and 5 in one setting?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no limit on how many, just as long as you guys are in line with your EYFS ratios. You know, we can have a varied range of apprentices, and in some we do. We have some level 2s, 3s and 5s all in one site, so that is something that we can support with.
Great, thanks, Sarah. Somebody asking here, we would have to pay £7.55 an hour from April. What are the rules with national insurance or holiday pay, etc.? Would that be for you, Steve?
Not really, because I deal with the funding of the apprenticeship. So I think, you know, as long as you're paying an apprenticeship a minimum wage, that is something that we would check. But obviously, we're not paying the employees. They are, you know, studying with us. So we don't generally get involved with the pay other than making sure that you are paying above the apprenticeship minimum wage.
Great, thanks, Steve. We're a school who pays into the apprenticeship levy and have a preschool that is funded through PVI funding. Does that class us as paying into the apprenticeship levy, or would we have to apply as a separate setting? So for you again, Steve.
Yeah, interesting one. So I'm not familiar with what PVI funding is, but as the apprenticeship service account is linked to your PAYE, that should really help you to understand whether or not you pay into the levy or not through that PAYE code. So I think that's the best way to determine it. I'm guessing that as you will probably all be wrapped into one PAYE code, then if you pay into the levy through that PAYE, then they were both classed as levy.
Brilliant. Thanks, Steve. Somebody asking about tutors, asking, are there local tutors in Devon?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got 4 tutors in Devon at this time with ample of capacity to take on new starts as well.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sarah. So another question kind of linked to tutors. Can you talk about the support that is offered for apprentices?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the things that we are very strong with at Best Practice Network is we do go above and beyond for our apprentices, and that's something that we are passionate about. You know, we're very fortunate to have a team that do genuinely care, and I think that is something that we really want for our tutors to be able to support our apprentices. So some of the things that we can do is, of course, we look at the apprentice's need. So if there is an additional learning support need there where further intervention is needed, we can up the level of visits to monthly or to weekly if need be. We can adapt materials. So we may sort of read various questions, or we may do more sort of discussion rather than written tasks. We can support with applying for access arrangements at endpoint assessment. We can offer additional advice and guidance. The webinars are a fantastic tool as well for learners to gain further knowledge, and some support from tutors who are delivering those webinars as well. You know, so it is really something that we do support, and a lot of our tutors keep in close communication with the employers as well, and that way then, you know, it's really a three-way conversation of what support is needed and how we can work with you to be able to achieve that. Of course, there is a level of accountability on the apprentice to complete their tasks, but absolutely we can support and adapt as we need to help those apprentices.
Brilliant, thank you. One more question here. Can you explain the functional skills rules, please? I don't know if that could be you, Sarah or Emma.
So the new ones that have come in terms of that, so it's more about the apprentice's start date. So if an apprentice starts an apprenticeship, which requires them to complete functional skills between 16 to 18 years of age, then they will need to complete their functional skills as mandatory as part of the government funding. But of course, if they start an apprenticeship at the age of 19 or plus, then there is the option to withdraw from the sort of the functional skills aim. Now, of course, there are considerations to that because, of course, you guys need to be mindful of your ratios and meeting the EYFS requirements, very much like Emma said earlier as well. However, we do have some apprentices who don't need to do their functional skills, but they've opted in to continue that and to achieve those qualifications. So really for a level 2 early years practitioner apprenticeship, they would need to complete their level 1 maths and English as a gateway requirement if they are between 16 to 18 years, or when they started the apprenticeship, they were 16 to 18 years. They may not be now, but when they were. And on a level 3 or a level 5 program, it's the level 2 maths and English functional skills. But again, it would all be sort of dependent on the age and whether they are continuing or opting out. We have had some that have opted out of the maths, but they're continuing with the English. So there is that level of flexibility with it as well.
Brilliant, thank you for that. So I think that is all the questions. Unless anyone else has one last, oh yeah, we do. For a level 2 apprentice, is there funding that we can use to put them on pediatric first aid training?
I don't know if Steve will have any other information, but to my knowledge, there isn't. The government funding is for the level 3 apprentices because it's part of the gateway requirement for them to go through to endpoint assessment. The level 2 endpoint assessment doesn't have the pediatric first aid as an entry requirement. So to my knowledge, not. Unless Steve, you have any other knowledge that I haven't got there? You're on mute, so I'll just wait for you to unmute yourself.
Sorry, IT issues there. No, nothing to add there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Another question here. If somebody does a level 3 and then wants to move on to level 5, is there a partial exemption, or do they need to start again?
So when you say that, I mean, there's a couple of ways to interpret that. So if someone does a level 3 and completes their level 3, and then moves on to a level 5, it is very much I mean, the level 5 is a completely different qualification compared to the level 3. The level 5 is about advancing practice and that leadership, and so it's more enhancing the knowledge that they've got. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's starting again. Now, one of the things that we look at induction at enrolment as well is something called recognition of prior learning. So we will, of course, look at the apprentices' knowledge that they've got already, the experience they've got already, and that may lead to some exemptions, providing it meets certain criteria with that. But that's, again, one of the discussions that the CAPS team can have with an apprentice who may have those exemptions or prior certificates, etc. The only thing I will say with certificates is, for them to sort of exempt is they would really need to be at a similar level to the qualification that they're doing. So that's just something to keep in mind.
Great, thank you. Right, I think that's where we'll leave it then. So just to say that we will send everyone who's attended and who also couldn't make it for this live session an email with our contact details if you have any further questions, and also a recording and the slides, so that if you want to go back over it, you can do. But thank you all for joining us this morning. Hope you have a really lovely rest of the day, and we really hope to welcome you soon onto our next cohort of apprentices. Thanks.